The night my wife told me the best gift I could give her was to vanish, I was standing in our kitchen holding a mug that had already gone cold. And for a split second, I honestly thought she was joking. Not because it was funny, but because some truths are so sharp your mind refuses to grab them barehanded. Before I tell you what happened next, do me a quick favor. Hit subscribe, tap like, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. Stories like this only reach the people who need them when you help push them forward. Now let me take you back to how it really began. My name is Michael. I was married to Laura for 3 years, though by the end it felt like we were just two exhausted adults sharing a mortgage and a last name. We weren't yelling anymore. That phase had burned itself out months earlier. What replaced it was worse. Silence. Polite, weaponized silence. The kind that makes a house feel crowded even when you're alone. Every day followed the same script. I woke up early, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table pretending to read the news while she moved around me like I was furniture she hadn't chosen. Conversations were transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? Your mother called. I'll be late. No warmth. No edge either. Just emptiness that I kept telling myself this was a phase. People our age, me in my mid-50s, her a year younger, go through dry seasons. Careers peak and plateau. Parents age. Energy shifts. I thought if I stayed steady, if I didn't rock the boat, we'd eventually find our way back. Her birthday was coming up in 3 weeks. That felt like an opportunity. A reset button. Something solid to grab onto. One Tuesday night. After another dinner eaten facing the television like strangers in an airport lounge, I followed her into the kitchen. She was washing dishes with unnecessary force, knuckles white, water splashing everywhere. What do you want for your birthday? I asked. She didn't turn around. I don't know, she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried that warning edge, the one that told you not to keep going unless you were ready for fallout. I ignored it. There has to be something. A weekend away. Jewelry. That wine tour you talked about last year. She shut off the water and slowly turned to face me. I'd seen anger before. This wasn't that. This was fatigue sharpened into honesty. You really want to know? She asked. Yes, I said, already bracing myself. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, you disappearing would be my best birthday gift. No yelling. No drama. Just a statement. Clean. Final. Like she'd been rehearsing it in her head for months and was relieved to finally say it out loud. That I laughed once, short and confused, then stopped when I realized she wasn't reacting. She wasn't waiting for my response. She'd already moved on, turning back to the sink as if the conversation was over. You disappearing, she repeated. That's what I want. Something inside me went still. Not anger, not heartbreak. A kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. That I stood there, looking around the kitchen we'd remodeled together. The photos on the fridge, the calendar with shared appointments. All of it suddenly felt like a stage set after the actors had gone home. Okay, I said quietly. She didn't respond. That night, lying in bed beside someone who felt 1,000 miles away, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and replayed her words over and over. Not with bitterness, but with curiosity. People say things they don't mean all the time. But this didn't sound like that. This sounded like relief. By morning, I understood something important. When someone finally tells you the truth about how they see you in their life, the most dangerous thing you can do is pretend you didn't hear them. The morning after she said it, nothing looked different, but everything felt altered. Like the air before a storm you know is coming but can't yet see. I woke up before the alarm, sat at the edge of the bed, and listened to Laura's breathing. Even asleep, she'd turned away from me, a habit that had quietly become permanent. I went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table exactly as I had for years. Same mug, same chair, same routine. Only this time, I wasn't waiting for anything to change. When she came down, she looked lighter. That was the word that kept landing in my mind. Like saying what she'd said had released pressure she'd been carrying for a long time. She actually met my eyes. Morning. she said. Morning, I replied. She lingered for a second, clearly expecting something. An apology, a reaction, a confrontation. I gave her none. I took a sip of coffee and said calmly, I heard you. Her eyebrows knit together. Heard me? What you said last night. Oh, she said, quickly looking away. I was tired. We were both frustrated. I understand, I said. And I meant it. That seemed to unsettle her more than anger ever could have. Over the next few days, I changed, but not in the way people expect when marriages hit rough water. I stopped trying. I didn't suggest counseling. I didn't plan date nights. I didn't ask if she wanted to talk. I didn't bring her coffee in bed or leave notes on the counter. I didn't withdraw with bitterness either. I was simply neutral. She noticed by the third day. You've been different, she said one evening as we passed each other in the hallway. Different how? I asked, quieter. Easier, she said after a moment. It's peaceful. Peaceful. That word echoed in my head long after she walked away. To her, peace meant my absence shrinking, my needs evaporating, my presence becoming optional. That night, while she sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, I sat in my home office with a legal pad and started writing things down. Not emotions, facts, account numbers, passwords, documents I knew we'd need someday. I wasn't dramatic about it. I wasn't rushing. I was methodical. Each evening followed the same pattern. She relaxed more. I focused more. She slept better. I thought clearer. 2 weeks before her birthday, she brought it up again, casually, like we were a normal couple. Maybe we should do something this year, she said at dinner. Have people over. Sure, I said. Who did you have in mind? She listed names, her sister, a few coworkers, the neighbors. People who'd watched our relationship quietly erode. People who smiled politely and avoided eye contact when tension filled the room. I can help organize it, I added. She looked genuinely surprised. Really? You don't mind? It's your birthday, I said. You should have exactly what you want. She smiled. A real one. The kind that used to be common. And that was when it hit me. She believed this new version of me was surrender. Acceptance. She thought I was finally becoming what she needed. Low maintenance, undemanding, easy to live beside. She had no idea I was simply listening. The house filled with planning lists and grocery runs. She talked more, laughed more, told me stories from work again. To anyone watching, it probably looked like we were healing, like the tension had finally broken. But late at night, when the house was quiet and she was asleep, I sat alone with my thoughts and felt something unexpected. Not rage, not despair, but resolve. There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes that staying quiet isn't strength anymore. It's just postponing the inevitable. Her birthday was approaching fast. Balloons waited in bags. Invitations had been sent. Smiles were rehearsed. And I watched it all unfold with a calm I hadn't felt in years, knowing only one thing for certain: words matter. Especially the ones spoken when people think no one will hold them to it. Her birthday arrived on a Saturday, perfectly timed, as if the calendar itself had conspired to make everything feel ordinary. I woke up early and moved through the house with quiet purpose. Decorations came out of their bags. Food was prepped. Drinks chilled. I played the role well, better than I had in months. If anyone had walked in that morning, they would have seen a man fully invested in celebrating his wife, not one standing at the edge of a personal reckoning. Laura watched me from the doorway more than once, her expression unreadable. You're really putting in the effort, she said while I adjusted a banner in the living room. It's your birthday, I replied. It should feel special. She nodded, satisfied, and went upstairs to get ready. I stood there for a moment after she left, letting the silence settle. There was something surreal about preparing a celebration for someone who had already told you how little space you occupied in their heart. By late afternoon, the house looked perfect. Music played softly. Candles were set. I even wore the shirt she'd bought me the previous Christmas, the one I'd never worn because we'd been barely speaking when she gave it to me. It felt appropriate, Like closing a loop, the guests started arriving around 4. Her sister Karen came first with her husband, arms full of wrapped boxes and loud energy. Then coworkers, Melissa, Diane, Tom, followed by the neighbors, Brian and Susan, smiling too brightly in that way people do when they're unsure what kind of evening they're walking into. What they saw put them at ease. I greeted everyone warmly, took coats, poured drinks, complimented outfits. I laughed at stories I'd heard before and asked questions I already knew the answers to. Laura glowed under the attention, relaxed, animated. She hadn't looked like this in a long time. At one point, Karen pulled me aside near the kitchen. "You two seem really good," she said. "Whatever you're doing, it's working. We're figuring things out." I replied that it wasn't a lie. Just not the truth. She thought it was. As the evening wore on, the room filled with laughter and overlapping conversations. Someone turned the music up. Glasses clinked. Laura moved through the crowd effortlessly, touching arms, smiling freely. Like a woman unburdened, that I watched her from across the room and felt a strange calm settle over me. This was exactly the environment she thrived in: warm, social, affirming. A world where my role was supportive but secondary, useful but not essential. Around 7, I stepped out onto the back patio alone. The night air was cool, grounding. Through the glass doors, I could see everyone laughing, hear muffled voices. It looked like a photograph from a happier time. For a moment, I wondered how many people there believed this was a turning point for us. When I went back inside, gifts were being opened. Jewelry, gift cards, wine. Laura reacted with genuine delight, thanking everyone, hugging people tightly. "And what about you?" Karen asked me with a grin. "Where's your gift?" I met Laura's eyes and smiled. "I'm saving mine for last." She looked curious but unconcerned. Why wouldn't she be? To her, the night was unfolding exactly as it should be. 10, the guests began to leave. Hugs at the door. Promises to get together soon. Compliments on the party. When the house finally emptied, Laura started stacking plates, humming softly to herself. "Thank you," she said. "This was really nice. I'm glad you enjoyed it." She hesitated. "Maybe we should do things like this more often." "Maybe," I said. She changed into pajamas and came back downstairs, curling up on the couch like she used to. For a brief moment, it almost felt familiar. "So," she said lightly, "you said the best gift was still coming." I sat down beside her, close enough that she didn't pull away. "Yes," I said. "It is." Her smile faded just slightly. Not fear, just curiosity. She waited. And for the first time that evening, the house felt completely still. She waited for me to explain, legs tucked beneath her, hands wrapped around a throw pillow like it was something solid she could anchor to. The music was still playing softly in the background, the last song on the playlist looping without either of us noticing. I looked at her for a long moment, not with anger, not with accusation, but with the kind of focus that comes when you finally stop arguing with reality. "You remember what you told me you wanted?" I said. Her posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. We were upset." "I didn't forget it," I continued evenly. "And I don't think you did either." She exhaled and gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Michael, come on. Married people say things." "It doesn't mean—" I heard clarity, I said. Not rage. Not exaggeration. The room felt colder after that, though nothing had changed. She set the pillow aside and leaned forward. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Tried again." "I meant I needed space. I needed things to be easier. I needed you to stop pushing." I nodded slowly. "That's not what you said." Silence stretched between us. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, counting seconds neither of us wanted to claim. "You're taking this too literally," she said finally. "You're being dramatic." I smiled faintly, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. That word had been used on me for years whenever I reacted instead of absorbing. "I don't feel dramatic," I said. "I feel calm." That seemed to scare her more than anything else I could have said. She stood up and began pacing. So what is this then? Some kind of punishment? You throw me a party, act perfect all night, and now you're doing this. No, I replied. This isn't punishment. Then what is it? I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. The tension in the room was doing enough talking for both of us. She rubbed her arms, suddenly restless. I thought things were better, she said. You stopped pressuring me. We stopped fighting. We stopped pretending. I corrected quietly. She shook her head. That's not fair. I know, I said. But it's true. Her voice cracked for the first time. So what happens now? I stood up slowly, careful not to crowd her. Now, you get the birthday gift you asked for. Her eyes widened. You're not serious. I am. She laughed again, sharper this time. You can't just walk away. That's not how marriage works. I looked around the living room, the couch we picked together, the framed photos, the bookshelf filled with shared history. That depends on how honest people are willing to be. She stared at me, searching for something. Anger, sarcasm, a tell that this was a bluff. She didn't find it. This is cruel, she said, her voice trembling. You're doing this to hurt me. No, I said gently. I'm doing this because I finally listened. She sank back onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. I didn't think you'd actually take it seriously. That's the problem, I said. You didn't think I would. The room went quiet again. The music ended and didn't restart. Somewhere outside, a car passed, tires hissing on pavement, life continuing without regard for what was unraveling inside this house. She looked up at me, eyes glossy. So that's it. For tonight, I said. For tonight? She echoed. Yes. She swallowed hard. And tomorrow? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Some questions are only frightening because the answer is already forming in your mind. She stood up abruptly. I'm going to bed. Okay. She paused at the stairs, hand on the railing. Michael, don't do something you can't take back. I watched her disappear upstairs, her footsteps fading one by one. Alone in the living room, surrounded by the evidence of a perfect party, I sat down and let the silence settle around me. Not heavy, not sharp, just final in a way I couldn't yet put into words. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was anxious, but because for the first time in years, my thoughts were clear. I woke up before dawn, not startled, not rushed, just awake. The house was quiet in that hollow way it gets when something has already ended but hasn't been acknowledged yet. I lay there for a moment, listening, then stood and dressed carefully, choosing each movement with intention. No anger, no hesitation, just certainty. Downstairs, the kitchen light hummed softly when I flipped it on. I sat at the table where we'd shared thousands of mornings and stared at the empty chair across from me. For years, I'd believed endurance was love, that staying, absorbing, minimizing myself was proof of commitment. But love that only survives when one person disappears isn't love. It's convenience that I made coffee but didn't drink it. Instead, I stood by the counter, looking at the notes I'd written the night before. Not dramatic, not emotional, simple, clear, honest. Words matter, especially the last ones people read. That I folded the paper once and placed it where she would see it. Then I picked up my keys. The front door opened without resistance. It closed the same way. Outside, the morning air was cool and still. No neighbors, no noise. Just the quiet truth of a decision finally acted on. I got into my car and drove, not looking back, not because it hurt too much, but because there was nothing left to check. The first few days passed in an odd blur of normalcy. Work, meals, evenings alone. I noticed how quiet my mind was. No rehearsing conversations, no bracing myself for tension, just space. Real space that I didn't turn my phone on right away. When I finally did, the messages came fast and layered. Confusion, anger, bargaining, fear. I read them once. I didn't respond. Time has a way of revealing what words try to hide. The panic didn't come because I was gone. It came because everything I'd been carrying was gone too. Responsibility doesn't feel heavy until there's no one left to share it with. Weeks later, when she finally stood in front of me again, she looked smaller somehow. Not weaker, just stripped of certainty. She spoke about anger, about stress, about not meaning it that way. But meaning isn't what changes lives. Impact is that I listened. I didn't interrupt. And when she finished, I said the only thing left that was true. You asked for a life without me. I respected you enough to believe you. I closed the door after that, not out of cruelty, but out of self-respect. Some people think this story is about revenge. It isn't. It's about boundaries. About what happens when someone finally hears the truth and refuses to argue with it. Love doesn't survive on hope alone. It needs choice. Mutual choice. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is give someone exactly what they asked for, and let reality do the rest. If this story made you think, if it stirred something you weren't expecting, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. I read them all. And if you've ever been in a moment where silence spoke louder than words, you're not alone, that I'll see you in the next story.